evening. I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and welcome to this edition of the Teleconnections discussion for Friday, the 4th of December, 2020. Looking at the slide here, we look at the MJO, the Mad-Julian oscillation phases, and the areas of enhanced convection. Once again, these are the different phases of the MJO. MJO ranging from phase 1 to phase 8, and these values here again are indicating where the enhanced convection typically occurs across the equatorial western Pacific as well as into the Indian Ocean area. So, for example, if, let's say, MJO was in phase 2, we would have enhanced convection or a thunderstorm development, rising air motion in that part of the tropical area of the world, there south of India. If our MJO was in phase 1, it would be sitting right there in the vicinity of Madagascar there in the western Indian Ocean. So just again, a reminder of how the MJO, the Mad-Julian oscillation, how it's associated with areas of enhanced convection and the different phases of the MJO from 1 to 8. Now moving ahead to the MJO temperature composites, I went ahead and now I'm including the December, January, and February temperature composites on the left. And again, just as a reminder, the blue shading indicates below normal temperatures, which are typically associated for the eastern U.S. with phases 8, 1, and 2. And the orangish shading there indicative of warmer than normal temperatures. And that's typically associated with MJO phases 3, 4, 5, and 6. Now 5 and 6 are the warmest of all the MJO temperature composites for the months of December, January, and February, which is considered meteorological winter. Now looking at the graphic on the right, we'll go right into the MJO forecast in accordance with the different models. The image on the right shows the GFS Ensemble MJO forecast, and the green line indicates a general forecast. This runs out to the 17th of December. You'll notice the inner circle again indicates a null phase. When I mean null phase of the MJO, very minimal impact, very low amplitude, not very amplified in other words. And the forecast according to the GFS Ensemble for today, the 4th of December 2020, shows the MJO pretty much around the null phase, around that inner circle. Not really going out into any kind of amplified phase. So we're expecting minimal impact in accordance with the GFS Ensemble forecast through the 17th of December. We move ahead now to the GFS operational MJO forecast on the left, showing the MJO phase diagram. Again, you'll see those values 1 through 8. Those are indicative of the MJO phases. The blue, the aqua color line indicates the NCEP, the GFS operational model. And again, look where that aqua color line is on the left. It's in that inner circle. Again, MJO null phase with minimal impact through the 17th of December. The graphic on the right shows the Navy ESPC MJO phased forecast out a little bit further out to the 5th of January 2021. And you'll notice with that particular graphic, the green dotted line there, solid green line, the darker color, that indicates a phase, weak phase 4, weak phase 5, but again, very minimal impact. So if we take a look at the MJO as a whole, we really don't have much influence, at least through the 17th of December for the MJO. Moving ahead to the La Nina update, the graphic on the left shows where the cooler than normal water temperatures are by the blue shading, and then the orange and the red shading indicates, really orangish shading, that indicates above normal water temperatures. So as of today on the 4th of December 2020, that blue area there off the west coast of South America extending along the equatorial eastern Pacific, that is indicative of La Nina conditions, those below normal water temperatures. And if you look at the orange shading, warmer than normal water sitting off the U.S. West Coast, as well as across parts of the Pacific Ocean stretching to the west towards Japan. Also, we have above normal water temperatures in the orange shading there off the New England coastline, all the way down off the mid-Atlantic. The image on the right shows the general trend, that solid blue line, of how the water temperatures have varied in the Niño 3.4 region. right now, the current value is sitting at about negative 1.26. So we're 1.26 degrees Celsius. It's in degrees Celsius below normal for water temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region. Now, that falls under the moderate La Nina territory, that area, considered moderate La Nina at the present time. Now moving on to the actual Teleconnections forecast, and things have got really interesting since I did my last video 2 weeks ago. First of all, the Arctic Oscillation, the North Atlantic Oscillation have definitely turned around from what I did the last video where they were indicative of being positive. So let's take a look at the latest forecast. Now the Arctic Oscillation, as a reminder, the negative Arctic Oscillation and the overall upper air pattern on the left. The positive Arctic Oscillation graphic on the right, showing how things change with the overall upper air circulation pattern. And specifically the jet stream location. With a negative Arctic Oscillation, you get a deep trough or a major dip in the polar front jet stream into the Midwest and Eastern U.S. with a negative Arctic Oscillation. And on the other hand, you get more of what's called cross-polar flow. Now, on the other hand, with the positive Arctic Oscillation on the right, we have more of a west to east zonal jet stream pattern from the west coast to the east coast, with the coldest air remaining bottled up with a stronger polar vortex up over the North Pole area. So we have milder air that moves across in a zonal west to east jet stream configuration with a positive Arctic Oscillation, so fairly mild temperatures associated with a positive AO. All right, let's take a look at the forecast models now. The European deterministic AO forecast showing that white circled line. Now that white circled line indicates the latest model run, which was the 0Z run on the 4th of December, showing the Arctic Oscillation remaining below that zero, that solid black line in the center of the diagram, remaining below that zero line in negative territory throughout the period, all the way out through the 13th of December. Now the other line colors there below the white circled line, those indicate past model runs. And just a couple days ago, this model had the Arctic Oscillation crashing significantly negative, but it has shown a little bit more of a tendency to level out, but still remain in negative territory. And here is the updated forecast from the EPS Arctic Oscillation 50 perturb members. This forecast goes out to the 19th of December. Pay attention to that green line. That green line is indicative of the median or the mean, the average between all the Ensemble members, the 50 members, staying negative. The Arctic Oscillation with cold temps in the east through 19 December. Moving on to the European EPS AO 50 perturb members out through the well beyond the middle of January 2021, showing a negative phase to the AO all the way out through about the 26th of December, just around Christmas time. And then that green line goes above the zero line, slightly positive, and then going back to neutral. But overall, if this model were to verify, we see colder temperatures in the eastern U.S. through the 26th of December, right around Christmas time, transitioning to a positive, slightly positive AO, and milder temperatures after that. Looking at the GFS deterministic AO forecast, a big crash in the Arctic Oscillation here in the first week of December. You see the white circular line again, indicating even a more negative tendency through the middle of December of the Arctic Oscillation, and that's the GFS model. And then finally for the AO, looking at the NSEP JEPS version 12, 30 perturb members out through the 20th of December. Again, that green line there, that's the median or average between all the Ensemble members. In this case, we have 30 members, 30 different variations, showing a negative tendency to the Arctic Oscillation. Moving ahead to the North Atlantic Oscillation forecast, NAO, just a reminder, here's your differences between positive versus negative phases in the NAO. Again, positive NAO phase, you get more of a zonal west to east jet stream, lack of high latitude blocking of a positive NAO, whereas a negative NAO phase, you get a more sharply amplified, a greater dip in the jet stream across the eastern United States directly from Canada, and a major block, upper level blocking into Greenland with a negative NAO phase. So look at the diagram on the right compared to the left, and you can see the black solid line, that's indicative of your jet stream, and what a difference in the amplitude, the ups and downs in that jet stream with a negative NAO versus the positive NAO on the left. Here's the forecast from the European deterministic model. Generally looking at a negative NAO. Again, that leads to high latitude blocking pattern, specifically upper level high or ridging into Greenland, and a trough in the eastern U.S. That would be through the 11th of December, transitioning to positive on this model after the 11th of December with a more progressive west-east pattern. So when you get more of a positive, even a slightly positive to neutral NAO, then you get more of a flatter jet stream, less amplitude, less amplified, and you get a faster moving progressive systems moving from west to east across the United States. Looking at the European EPS NAO 50 perturb members, pay attention to that green line again. That is indicative of your ensemble average. All right, that's the average of all the 50 perturbed runs, 50 perturbed members, showing a negative tendency through about 10 December of the NAO, transitioning to more neutral state. The European EPS NAO 50 perturbed members forecast, see that green line there, generally negative NAO through the 16th of December, according to this model, transitioning to more neutral conditions after the 16th of December. Notice how that green dashed line after the 16th of December, the dates are there on the bottom, generally averages out to closer to that zero line, more neutral conditions. GFS deterministic, North Atlantic oscillation forecast, showing a negative NAO throughout the model run, all the way out through the 21st of December. Now this is very similar to the GFS, or rather to the Arctic oscillation GFS forecast we just looked at. And then the NCEP GEFS, the Ensemble forecasting system, the GFS, version 12, 30 perturbed members. Note the green line. The green line starts off in negative territory, negative NAO through the 15th to the middle part of December, transitioning to neutral conditions after mid-month. Now on the Pacific North American forecast, PNA, here again is a reminder of positive PNA on the bottom left and a negative PNA on the bottom right. With a positive PNA, you get more of below normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. With western ridge, eastern trough. With a negative PNA, it's the opposite effect. You get above normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. with warmer than normal temps. Generally, you get below normal temps out in the western U.S. So more of a negative PNA. We get more of a western trough, eastern ridge setup. Here's the European deterministic PNA forecast. Positive PNA, and this is a sharply positive PNA. We noticed this trend right when we headed towards the latter part of November, and definitely this first week of December. It was a major rise to the positive side for the PNA, and that really set the stage for some colder temperatures in the eastern U.S. and more of a trough. And that ridge out the western U.S., which unfortunately doesn't help the fire situation out in California. But anyway, this is looking like it's a positive PNA through the 13th of December, transitioning to neutral conditions, more zonal west to east jet stream, and then near average temperatures as we head to mid-December. The European EPS PNA 50 perturbed members forecast out to 19 December, the 15-day forecast, starting out with a positive PNA, which would indicate the cold temps in the trough in the eastern U.S., transitioning to a negative PNA after about the 15th of December, mid-month, slightly negative, which would put the trough in the western U.S. a little bit more. And then the European EPS PNA 50 perturbed members forecast, 46-day forecast now, all the way out to just beyond mid-January 2021. A very sharply positive PNA here at the beginning of December, transitioning to a negative, slightly negative territory there after mid-December, and definitely by Christmas time, a negative PNA, which would indicate a little bit of a pattern change in the upper level circulation of the atmosphere. And then the GFS deterministic PNA forecast shows a sharply positive PNA, transitioning to more neutral conditions around the 11th of December. So cold to start in the east through that period, about the 11th of December, and then more neutral conditions, which we'd expect to be more close to average as far as temperatures go. And then finally, the NCEP GEFS version 12 PNA 30 perturbed members forecast. Pay attention to that green line once again, and notice how sharply positive PNA with that ridge in the west in the most recent 10 days, transitioning to more neutral conditions over time. Now on to the Eastern Pacific Oscillation forecast. There's your differences between the East Pacific Oscillation negative phase on the left and the positive phase, the EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation, on the right. And again, notice the negative EPO, you get more of an Arctic high that comes down out of Canada, a major dip in the polar front jet stream into the lower 48. Whereas with the positive EPO, you get mild air from coast to coast across the lower 48, with the coldest air remaining over the North Pole area. Here's the European deterministic EPO forecast. A lot of ups and downs in this outlook, starting with today, the 4th of December. Follow the white circled line there for the outlook. Staying positive for the most part, not really dipping below that zero line at all. The European EPS 50 perturb members 15-day forecast, that pay attention to the green line. Positive, and they may be slightly negative between the 10th and the 11th of December, then back positive again. The European EPS 50 perturb members 46-day forecast out beyond mid-January 2021. Look at that green line. That shows the Ensemble mean or average of all the 50 perturbed runs or members, showing a positive EPO throughout the period. Now that would again indicate warmer temperatures across the eastern U.S. and actually across most of the U.S. as a whole. Here's the GFS deterministic EPO forecast, showing a lot of ups and downs there. The white circled line there, our outlook line out through the 21st of December, a lot of ups and downs, but overall averaging out neutral. And then the NCEP JEFS B12 EPO 30 perturb members. Follow that green line there, the ensemble average again of all the 30 members. Positive to start and maybe a slight dip to negative between the 10th and the 11th, but back to positive, which would indicate warmer temps across the eastern U.S. again. And now for the polar vortex update. Now I've been watching this really closely, the polar vortex. All right. The current analysis is on the left, and it shows, see how there's an elongation or a stretching of the polar vortex. And this is mainly due to an upper level blocking pattern into the Urals. Forecast is showing on the right continued stretching of this vortex through the 19th of December. So there is weakening. There's a definite weakening trend to the polar vortex. Now that could lead to more substantial consequences later this winter, perhaps late December into the middle parts of January, if this were to continue, if this weakening. And so this is something to keep a close eye on. If the polar vortex were to split or become displaced off the North Pole, we could have chunks of Arctic air that gets dislodged down into the lower 48, into the eastern United States, especially after a split vortex. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on the polar vortex during the winter months. It's always an important thing to do. All right, so here's my final thoughts on tonight's video. The Madden-Julian Oscillation, or MJO, that's currently in a null phase through the middle of December. Minimal impact expected to the United States weather because of that null phase. It's not amplified at any specific phases. Next, the La Nina conditions definitely are continuing across the equatorial eastern Pacific. We're sitting at about negative 1.25 degrees Celsius, below normal water temps, 1.25 degrees C, below normal in the Nino 3.4 region in the moderate La Nina area. And with that, looking at the past 2 weeks, there's not been much of a change in those water temperature abnormalities over the eastern Pacific in the Nino 3.4 region, only dropping from 1.2 to 1.26 below normal. So that a general La Nina pattern favors milder temperatures in the eastern U.S., a mild and dry pattern in the mid-Atlantic. Models are indicating a negative trend in that Arctic oscillation, the AO, through the middle of December. Now, the last 5 to 7 days, we've seen a positive PNA, we've seen a negative AO, we've also seen a slightly negative NAO. Now, I really believe recently that the PNA and the AO have been the dominant teleconnections that have influenced our weather here in the eastern U.S. That it's really interesting to watch it. MJO has been a non-player to this point so far as we head into meteorological winter, just the start of it. So generally, that trend in the AO remains negative throughout the forecast period through mid-December. And that that to me just, it's going to yield colder temperatures in the eastern U.S. Next, the models are indicating a negative trend in the North Atlantic Oscillation, NAO, through the 12th of December. But then we see it transitioning to a neutral phase. And if it's a neutral phase, the NAO, we're going to expect a breakdown of high latitude blocking across the North Atlantic. That's going to allow for a more progressive weather pattern. When I say progressive, that means fast-moving weather systems from west to east, a fairly flat or zonal jet stream. So we would expect with a negative NAO through about the 12th of December, colder temperatures, but then a more zonal jet stream and near average temperatures. That's what that would yield. Additionally, models are indicating a positive trend in that PNA through the 13th of December. Now that would favor the coldest temperatures to be east of the Mississippi River in the eastern U.S. with a trough, and then mildest temperatures out in the western U.S. with a ridge. That eventually is expected to transition to neutral or even slightly negative conditions for the PNA. So what we expect from that would be colder temperatures through the 13th of December, transitioning to near average or slightly above average after the 14th of December. So something to keep an eye on. Additionally, models are indicating a positive trend in the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, the EPO, through mid-December, and that would yield generally a mild temperature regime in the eastern U.S., but actually quite a bit of the whole U.S. would be mild, with more of a zonal west to east flow and more Pacific air infiltration across the lower 48. And models also are indicating a weakening polar vortex through about the 19th of December. We're not expecting any major impacts in the short term with near average temperatures for the eastern U.S., but if the weakening were to continue, we could see some significant impacts later in the winter. So now if I look at all these teleconnections from today's data and from the past week's data, overall assessment, teleconnections over the past 2 weeks have significantly changed. As I mentioned briefly at the start of the video, we have seen a major change, especially in the AO as well as the NAO and the PNA. The upper atmospheric circulation, including the polar front jet stream position and the amplitude of that jet, have responded to these teleconnection changes with colder episodes across the eastern U.S. And now at the current time, the positive PNA and the negative AO and NAO have been the more dominant teleconnections, with that mean upper level ridge in the west and that mean upper level trough across the eastern U.S. Cold temperatures are looking to hold over the eastern U.S. through at least the 10th of December. Now that's a minimum date. They could extend a little bit beyond that, with a transition to average to slightly above average temperatures from the 11th to the 18th of December. Right now, it's looking like the latest model data and guidance is showing this. It's showing the more of a progressive pattern. We see some troughing out in the western U.S., transitioning east over time. But overall, the eastern U.S. looks fairly mild, according to the latest model guidance from about the 11th to the 18th of December. Now, it could get colder a little bit sooner than the 18th. There's been some disagreement amongst the long-range models, ensembles. So it's something to keep an eye on. It may be a little bit earlier than that. It may be mild over a shorter period. So we'll have to see how that plays out. There's lots of cold air in Canada right now. And with that built-up cold air up above the U.S.-Canadian border, this gets spilled into the lower 48 into the U.S. in late December, early January rather easily. If the main storm track, another thing with the teleconnections, the positions of the jet stream, that all influences the main storm track development as well as how the storms move once they develop. Recently, we've seen some more southern route low pressure systems from the Gulf of Mexico to off the East Coast, or more of a southern route through the southern U.S. and then up the coast. Last winter and the year before that, even that last 2 winters, we've seen more of a storm track across the Midwestern U.S. And every time, if we get the storms that track from, let's say, the Oklahoma area up through the Midwest to Michigan, that's just going to produce a lot of warm, mild air with southwesterly winds into the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast Virginia. But on the other hand, if that main storm track sets up further south from the Gulf Coast to the Mid-Atlantic, then the models will adjust accordingly with colder temperatures on the backside of these systems. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in the atmosphere. for this week, and I'm really excited to share this information with you. This December does not, in my opinion, look like the past 2 Decembers. There's a lot of changes going on in the atmosphere that we just didn't see last December. For example, the negative Arctic Oscillation in December. It was such a mild December last year. I'd actually shared the Virginia Beach December temperatures dating back in time quite a ways back. We haven't had a below normal December for Virginia Beach and the Hampton Roads, Virginia area since 2010, really. So it's been a while. We've had a lot of milder Decembers. Winter has come on later each year. And then typically when winter comes on later, it tends to last later too in the spring. So there's a lot of things going on. We look at MJO. It's not much of a player right now. That doesn't mean later on in the winter that's not going to actually become more of a player in our weather and become more amplified in specific phases. The La Nina conditions, mild temperatures are what we typically expect in the eastern U.S. We expect milder air and drier conditions for the winter in the Mid-Atlantic. But one thing I want to mention is all these other teleconnections, the AO, NAO, PNA, those teleconnections can actually offset the La Nina conditions. So I mentioned this before in past videos about the difference between constructive interference and destructive interference. Now, when all the teleconnections line up and are favorable either for above or below normal air temperatures, when the teleconnections line up in a certain direction or pattern, that is very important to consider. That's constructive interference in that case, when they line up and work together. Now, when the teleconnections work against each other, let's say we have a La Nina, which we do this winter, and then we have a sharply negative Arctic Oscillation or AO. That's destructive interference. So it's almost like a offsetting impact of the teleconnections. So there's a lot of interesting things that need to be considered when we talk about this upcoming winter. Again, I don't see this winter playing out as mild as 2019, the 2019-20 winter played out, even though there's a La Nina in effect. So we'll have to keep an eye on things, see how the jet stream and upper air circulation patterns across the northern hemisphere, how they pan out over time. I certainly appreciate you listening to this video tonight. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for subscribing to the Spot on Weather YouTube channel. I am fired up. I love this time of year. We're getting close to Christmas. I know we have a changing world this year with COVID going on, and I really hope everybody out there is staying healthy and taking care of each other during this very rough time of the pandemic. But I tell you what, this is a great time of year as far as Christmas coming up, and if you like any kind of winter weather like me, this is our chance. Hopefully this year we'll see some snow across the Mid-Atlantic. I know the last couple winters have been very, let's just say, heartbreaking if you like any kind of winter weather. So we will keep you updated. We got a storm system moving through the Mid-Atlantic today on the 4th of December, producing some rain this evening, overnight into tomorrow morning. An interesting system, another little coastal low, possibly Monday, the 7th of December, which, very cold air in place. We could see a few snowflakes mixed in overnight on Monday night across the Mid-Atlantic with the rain. So we'll see what happens with that one. I like the way this thing is setting up. There's indications, again, the polar vortex in the long range may break down, and that could lead to some much colder and a stormier pattern in the eastern U.S., especially into January. But, it could happen even sooner than that in late December. So thank you so much for watching. Follow me on social media. Follow Spot on Weather, social media, Facebook, Twitter, as well as, I just did a blog today on the website, and I'm always sharing the latest monthly numbers with everybody on social media for the temperatures and the patterns that we've seen in the past. Thank you so much for subscribing. Again, you guys are awesome. Have a great Friday night, everybody. Most importantly, stay healthy. I'm hoping everybody's getting into the holiday season well. And take care, and God bless.